Today we answer the question: can you beat Celeste without dashing? Today we answer the question: how many dashes do you need to beat Celeste? Deprived of the main mechanic of the game, Celeste suddenly transforms in quite a different challenge, as you will have to think out of the box and clear rooms in ways that are unconventional. Let's begin. Chapter 1 begins with a nice and cozy first room, but the next one already poses a problem, as the row of spikes is too long for Madeline to cover. I tried several options before assuming that this would be the first dash of the run. The next room also didn't look that good. How was I supposed to cover all this distance without dashing? Well, the answer came by grabbing onto these tiny ledges without touching the spikes, a very precise maneuver that let me reach the platform, and the next couple of screens were really easy and they could be completed just by following the intended path, but we yet found another obstacle in the road in this room. There was no way I could avoid those spikes, so after using the second dash of the run, now it was a matter of thinking how I could get to the other side, and the right call was to jump through the upper section. And hey, late Landa here, editing this stuff with Weskis. Yeah, so actually I could have made the first jump using a really complicated technique. I just wasn't aware of that. That's like top player mechanics. So yeah, just wanted to heads up you that information. By ease, I managed to climb the left wall on the next room without dashing, but I soon realized the third dash had to be used to get to the other side. Dash number 4 was required in this room, but I was quite proud of my tiny ledge management. As you will see, neutral jumps are pivotal to climb some platforms, and I will be using them throughout the whole run. Not only are they good to move around tiny gaps, but they also let me climb walls without using stamina, which is vital to my strategy. Another dash was necessary to close this huge gap, and another one to cover the distance between the last falling ice block and the end of the room. After careful consideration, I used a 7th dash to perform a speedrun strat in the last room, as I thought that going the regular route would require more dashes. And with that, chapter 1 was completed with a total of 7 dashes. I left chapter 1 pretty confident in my plan, but things were about to get worse real fast. Chapter's 2 main mechanic are these dreamy cosmic blocks that you enter by dashing. You see the problem? Yeah. Here I started dashing more frequently, using 1 to break the first unavoidable ground block, 2 to get across the following spike room, and I almost did dash in the next room, but after a good showcase of what no skill issue looks like, I managed to clear it. After that, the dreamy blocks entered the equation, and although I only used a couple of dashes to that point and to get out of the initial zone, I soon ran into challenges that require a lot of dashing. Even in these conditions, I tried to position Madeline in a way that would let me to save up a dash or 2 occasionally, and with 11 dashes under my belt in this chapter, I ran into Madeline for the first time. And man, what a chase it was. 3 dashes right off the bat, with one in diagonal that is almost pixel perfect. These were dense to be able to perform neutral jumps, 2 dashes in the blue coins room, 1 to soar the skies with 5 or 6 Madelines chasing me, and 4 dashes in the final room of the chase. And it still kept going. 2 dashes to get through dreamy blocks on my way to the payphone, and chapter 2 was conquered with a whopping 25 dashes. This is going to grow exponentially, isn't it? The entrance to the Celestial Resort didn't pose much of a challenge, but Mr. Oshiro had left the entrance key all the way up there, so I had to figure out a way to pick it up without dashing. I discovered that I could get on the first platform using a neutral jump, and then it was just a matter of getting the proper angle to reach the key. The first room inside the resort already required 1 dash, and the second one kept me guessing if it was possible to reach the walls. I tried for a while, but my effort was proven useful. I grabbed the key after a tight jump, and yeah, there's no way I'm making that without a dash. Or that's what I thought, because after repeating the same technique as before, I managed to get to the other side using the sliding platforms. At this point, I was honestly surprised that Celestial Resort wasn't that dash demanding. Some rooms were difficult and required difficult inputs, sure, but overall, so far so good. The room with the blue coins had a mandatory dash that broke my streak, and so did the next one. I realized a lot of rooms required stamina management, and I was really good at it. I guess all these months of speedrunning the game really helped to get my neutral jump skills on point. Another dash had to be used on my way to the cabinet room, and after some time, we arrived to this place. This level design is going to mess me up, I swear. Of course, there was a 1 dash cost to get through it, and 2 dashes of extras in the next room. Oh well, the third path already begins with a dash. Another one was used here and here. And oh hey, I actually forgot, but add those 3 dashes that you need to get the items cleaned and ordered. And well, while you are at it, add 4 whole dashes for this long ass room that had me experimenting with stuff for a very long and tiresome time, and 3 more for the room right after it, that had that same level design pattern that forced my hand before. The wall of those creatures posed a moral dilemma for me. I could take the speedrun route, that required a well-timed crouch dash, or I could go through the regular route and try to see if I could do it dashless. I explored the regular route for a bit, but it soon dawned on me that the sacrifice in the regular route would be way greater than using the speedrun route. So there you go. The last room of the resort cost 6 painful dashes, and on to the fight with Mr. Oshiro we went. The battle against the Phantom Manager relied a lot on bouncing off of his head and to get extra height and distance, and I was honestly amazed at how much I could do without dashing. But then this room appeared and my pride was crushed. And so, adding up 7 dashes from the battle, we leave Celestial Resort with 35 dashes. Honestly, not bad. It could have been worse. And hey, quick reminder, if you're liking the video so far, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment, or things like that. They do a huge boost for our channel. Thanks. Bye. When the first room of chapter 4 asked me for a dash right after Madeline arrived, I knew something was off. This chapter was going to be brutal. Or so I felt. The ferocious wind forced me into a lot of tricky situations, and even though I did a lot of green bubble shenanigans, I couldn't stop Madeline from dashing here and there, and we entered into moving blocks territory. I managed to clear some rooms with really precise neutral jumps, and some of them just required good lateral movement, so it wasn't as bad as I expected. Then the wind made a comeback and I had to do lots of unavoidable dashes, with some rooms claiming 4, 5 or even 6 dashes. It was a massacre. In this one, I did a really cool trick going below the spiky platform with a well-timed super to get launched in a certain angle that would let me skip the whole screen. Here, something curious happened. As I unexpectedly died in the spikes, Madeline respawned on the platform above, saving me 1 dash in the process. I honestly didn't see that one coming, and made me thought that maybe this was applicable to other situations. At the end of the chapter, with the troublesome wind at full force, I had to rely a lot on the little funny crouching technique. I can. Look at Madeline go, she's so cute, and also I needed to rely on the snow balls to avoid dashing, as the extra boost you get from them made me reach barely some platforms. There was one particular room that was disastrous for me, as I had to spend 7 or 8 dashes to cover it, and after my journey through the windy ridges, I ended up with 56 dashes in my pocket. Chapter's 5 entrance also cost 1 dash, but it was going to be as bad as chapter 4? Well, you see, it's complicated. There are some speedrun skips that, even if they require dashing, save up a lot of rooms in the long run, so I gladly chose to perform them to quickly get going. Buttons required 1 dash to be activated, and that was kind of a letdown, but nevertheless I kept going feeling pretty confident that this was going to be less punishing than the previous chapter. Platforms that move when you dash are one of the main mechanics of this chapter, and quite logically, they cost me a lot during this whole part, even though I tried to avoid them as much as possible. I used a second skip to keep advancing. I did 2 dashes at the Lovecraftian horror creature that pursues Madeline, and I spent a total of 4 dashes before entering the section with the horrendous beasts. I feel really proud of this part because I outsmarted the creatures most of the time, and it felt amazing because I was able to do it without dashing even once. These feelings of satisfaction faded away quickly as I entered this room, that kindly asked for 4 dashes. I performed the speedrun skip number 3, and after spending a lot of time luring this creature to break the wall and let me grab the blue coin hidden in it, I finally reached Theo's sections, which terrified me, to be honest. However, Theo's crystallized section went actually really well. Even though I think I could have activated some buttons with him and I didn't realize it, I used him for a good chunk of the run and even did this awesome combo with the Chasing Beast and Theo. I had to dash to move the special platforms in the following rooms, but after that, I reached the end of the Mirror Temple and was relieved to find out I only had spent 4 dashes in there. Yoo-hoo! It's time for reflection and the introduction of the most iconic and beloved mechanic in this channel, the Gold Feather. I already had to spend 3 dashes to get those feathers out of their bubbles, so I feared how punishing this chapter would be. I also got quickly introduced to cabin blocks, which also require dashes to activate. Yeesh! This is going to be a nightmare. And look, I was right, so Weskies, fast forward until I perform the neutral jump scare. There. That is cool. Saves up a lot of stuff. Okay, let's move on, let's see. Oh, there! These pinballs were really fun to use, as I had to get a perfect angle sometimes to avoid dashing. This room was very expensive and there were other situations in which I couldn't avoid dashing even though I was using the pinballs to get launched from place to place. I managed to get through this one with only 2 dashes and it was honestly quite impressive, in my opinion. But come on, let's be real here. What we want to really show you is the fight against Battleline. What a challenge. Dodging the fireballs, the falling blocks, the death laser, oh, did I tell you? She has a death laser. Everything was being incredible and I managed to get through a good chunk of it just using 1 dash. However, as soon as I reached this part of the fight, I knew I was in trouble. The lengthy rooms cost me some dashes, but overall I was able to shove off a couple of them and managed to utilize all the resources of the fight in my favor. Then the battle ensued with the moving blocks and I had to think out of the box to approach Battleline without either dying nor dashing. A clutch pinball let me avoid 1 dash at the end of a really long screen, and after that, the final showdown ended with me having to pay 3 dashes and with Battleline defeated. However, the chapter wasn't done, as the climb with the double dash, now available, added some extra dashes to my count, that went up to 69. Nice. And so, the summit awaited. The final challenge. A test of wit and endurance. I already knew this wasn't a mere dilemma of whether to dash or not. We already had surpassed that question. Now the main quest was to shave off as many dashes as possible. Like in this room, where a lot of neutral jumping and stamina management let me clear it with just 1 dash. Intro section cleared, 23 dashes. 500 meter was pretty much played like in a regular run, with the exception of this blue coin room in which a perfect stamina management let Madeline get out of there with only a single dash. I completed the section with 23 dashes again, just like the previous one, and kept climbing onto the 1000 meters checkpoint, which was an absolute tragedy. There was another blue coin room that I navigated quite good, to be honest, and this vertical screen that put my stamina management skills to test. 36 were the dashes that this section cost, and we were already close to 100 without having completed half of the summit chapter. 1500 meters saw the return of the dust creatures, and it went more or less like the previous sections. I need to highlight this precise wall jump that let me skip the room with just a single dash because it was frankly beautiful. And surprisingly enough, this part of the last chapter also cost me 36 dashes, just like the previous one. What the hell is even going on at this point? The 2000 meter mark brought back the snowball maneuvers, but this time they were 100 times more complicated. The vertical moving platform room was solved by wall jumping a lot. The last room of the chapter was the most expensive yet, costing a whooping 12 dashes that I couldn't avoid no matter what. Add 43 more dashes to the count because that's how much this section required of. And moving on, The 2500 meters checkpoint was more forgiving, and here there was the first instance of the regular route prevailing over the speedrun skip. As to get the golden key, the regular route demanded 1 dash and the skip asked for 2. As I'm kind of a mathematician, and you can see I chose the regular route because it cost less than the skip run. You see what I'm doing. Okay, great. The section basically ended with a rewarding ascension to the top, and with a total chapter count of almost 200 dashes, now only 30 flags were between me and the top. The first 10 flags were the final test of stamina management and neutral jumps, as the wind blew down on Madeline and I had to get creative to avoid dashing upwards. On the next 10 we had this part that, those are a lot of dashes. The wind now was blowing upwards, and somehow that was worse, as I didn't have any skill that allowed me to avoid dashes in this situation, so I saved up almost nothing. The final stretch was very neutral jump centered, as I ditched the golden feather. Who needs it anyway? Okay, yeah, maybe I do need it, but we're so far so good. I advanced through the last flags using dashes only when necessary, of course, and the music slowly faded away, and I saw the top of Mount Celeste in the distance. I was full of determination as I climbed, moving forward, until, finally, after this long journey, I reached the top. Yeah, we actually did it. The summit claimed 346 dashes, a jaw-dropping amount compared to the previous chapters, and with that, we can finally answer the question: how many dashes does it take to beat Celeste? Well, I probably think that you could avoid some of the ones that I used here and there, but to me, Celeste needs to be beaten with 578 dashes. Thanks for watching, and until we meet again.